Welcome back to the Conduct Detrimental Podcast. We're going to do one last Deflategate pod. It's not over yet. This is the last chance we have to make this thing relevant. Obviously,
no, there were still 11 days left. Let's not be premature about it. We have many more opportunities, but today's a special one. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dan.
No, I was just going to say, I'm, as always, joined by my co-host, Dan Wallach. Dan, what's happening?
Well, we're getting ready for the Super Bowl. Again, this is a compelling storyline for the New England Patriots. Their regular season, or the off season for them, began March 3rd, 2016, in the Second Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals. So it's been a very long off season for all things New England Patriots. And our next guest today was right in that courtroom reporting on the oral argument in the Second Circuit. So we're being joined today by one of the most influential NFL columnists in the country. He's the NFL reporter for the Boston Globe since 2013. He covers the New England Patriots. Ben Volin previously was at the Palm Beach Post covering the Miami Dolphins during the infamous or famous Bill Parcells, Jeff Ireland, and Tony Sperano era. So Ben has the unique and distinct privilege of having covered different aspects of the Parcells and Belichick coaching tree. So I'd be interested at some point in getting into the media relationship that both of those administrations had with the press covering the team, because they have a reputation for being very clamped down on the flow of information, and they present challenges to reporters like Ben who cover the team. Ben, welcome to Conduct Detrimental.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me today. I've been very lucky in my career. It's going on 12 years now since I got into this industry, and I've been able to cover Bill Parcells, as you mentioned, and now Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. And also I covered the Florida Gators during the Urban Meyer, Tim Tebow, Aaron Hernandez era. So I've just been very lucky to be kind of right place and right time, and especially here with the Patriots. I've been here 4 years now. We're on our second Super Bowl trip. And it's still arguably not the biggest story that I've covered, between Deflategate, obviously, and also Aaron Hernandez. So I just kind of like fall backwards into some of these big stories sometimes.
So you're kind of a good luck charm for the New England Patriots, despite what some Patriots fans might think.
I don't think they'd say that based on how Deflategate turned out.
Yeah, but you're continuing in the fine tradition of the Boston Globe's NFL coverage, from Will McDonough to Greg Bedard, and now on to you. And for my money, and I do read all the columns, and one of my favorite things to do on Sunday, actually now Saturday, is to read the various NFL notes columns put out by journalists such as yourself and Gary Myers. And yours and Gary's, I think, are best in class when it comes to Sunday football notes. And just keep up the great work in that. It's just chock full of useful information about what's going on around the league, on and off the field. So it's a particular favorite of mine, and I'm pretty psyched to have you on the program today. So Dan, let's kick it off.
Yeah, let's just cut right to it, Ben. I know that there's this group of so-called quote-unquote Patriot truthers out there who think that nothing happened and that this was a giant conspiracy theory. I'm sure you've had to deal with those fans on a pretty constant basis over the last couple of years. I mean, what really happened here? What's the after all of this, do we actually know what the facts of what happened, in your opinion?
Not really, which is the most frustrating aspect of Deflategate. Is it's we spent so much time and energy and wasted brain power on this pretty ridiculous scandal, and we still don't fully know what happened. Like, I have a pretty good idea that I think they were doing it. I think at the end of the day, the basic question, were they doing it? Yes. I think McNally, the ball boy, was doing something taking a little bit off the top. Jastrzemski knew about it. Tom Brady, we remember he got all over those guys after that Jets game. The balls were like balloons. They were inflated almost to 16. So I think, I don't think there were explicit instructions from Brady, take the needle and do this. But I think there was a general understanding, make sure the balls are on the lower end. And if you go back and read the Wells report, for a typical game, McNally was being left alone in that officials' locker room by himself for 30, 45 minutes while the officials were out during pregame warm-ups doing their thing. So he's just sitting there all alone with the ball. So he never had to do anything surreptitiously to deflate the footballs. He was all alone, fox in the hen house kind of thing, and he could just take the balls out. What happened in the AFC Championship game is, if you remember, it was the second game that day, and that officials' locker room was very crowded before the game because everyone was watching the Seahawks, I think it was Packers game. And so McNally had to change up his routine, and so he took the balls out, and they lost track of him, and he probably took him into the bathroom. And people say a minute 40 isn't long enough to do it. He was just going to the bathroom. I don't know if you've ever timed yourself going to the bathroom, but a minute 40 is an eternity. So the fact that he changed his story about where he went a couple times, and he was in there long enough just to take a little bit of air off the top, at the end of the day, not a big deal. I said from the beginning, it felt like, maybe not a speeding ticket, but maybe reckless driving. The NFL took it way too far, and I think the Tom Brady 4-game suspension was unjust. However, at the end of the day, yes, I think they were doing it, and the result was, a lot of it too. One thing I always go back to: if the Patriots were totally innocent, and these guys McNally and Jastrzemski were completely innocent, the Patriots would have made them available. Instead, it's, we can't possibly do another follow-up interview because they have jobs, and we don't want to take away too much from their lives. And I mean, come on, if you're innocent, you offer the guy up and you explain yourself. And so just the Patriots, they quietly fired the guys, they sent them away. They refused to explain what the deflator means, that whole thing. So again, that is a sign of guilt to me. If you're innocent, you freely explain those things. The fact that they shielded those guys, I think, is very telling.
Yeah, Ben, where today are Jastrzemski and McNally? You mentioned that they were fired or let go. You think they're subject to non-disclosure agreements, and have they surfaced in any way, or are they just basically hiding out with Walter White in some cabin in New Hampshire?
I mean, the rumor, is that there was a settlement and there are non-disclosures, and so they're not allowed to talk about it. No one really knows. They've gone into hiding. One of them was a full-time. Jastrzemski was a full-time employee. He was quietly fired. The Patriots never said anything about it. Again, they were stomping their feet and saying, he's innocent. Well, then why'd you fire the guy? But no one's been able to get to him. He hasn't come out of hiding yet. He's not done an interview. So that makes me think, obviously, there's some sort of non-compete there. And McNally, I'm not sure if he was reinstated. I think he was. He was just a game day employee. He's not allowed in the officials' locker room anymore, so they gave him a different responsibility. If they fired him or told him not to come back, he wasn't a full-time employee, so I don't think anyone would ever know. So again, these guys have kind of gone into witness protection a little bit, and if they were so innocent, the Patriots would have made them available just to explain the few questions. What does the deflator mean, and what did some of these text messages mean? How do you
reconcile, kind of your take on what we now know about the ideal gas law and sort of the science behind it?
Anyone who's lived in the Northeast understands it completely. I mean, when it's cold out, your tires, the tire pressure is low. And then when your car warms up and the tires warm up, they expand. So obviously it took everyone a day or two to realize that was what was going on here. And the thing about the science in this is that none of it was exact. This wasn't a well-done scientific experiment. Certainly the measurements that night, they didn't take a number of factors into account. They only tested 4 of the Colts balls. There's no real evidence that Walt Anderson even tested the balls before the game. He never wrote down the measurements. No one really witnessed him doing it. We're just taking him at his word. So, when they tried to replicate it, they did the best they could, but they were making a lot of assumptions about the exact temperature in the room and the air pressure. And, this wasn't a well-designed scientific experiment. The variables weren't controlled. So at the end of the day, the science doesn't prove things one way or the other. It doesn't prove it didn't happen, and it doesn't prove it did happen. To me, I go back to the text messages and the Patriots not making these guys available and Tom Brady destroying his cell phone and all these things. That's what paints the Patriots as guilty here.
Yeah, Ben, we're about to enter into a phase with the Super Bowl 12 days away. You're going to be inundated with Deflategate references. You know, the case that ended in September or August, September is now going to have a new life, you know, with Media Day and all the national, press converging on the Super Bowl. How, since you're on the inside and follow the team day to day, how much of a distraction do you think that Deflategate was to the organization and to Brady, or did it serve more as a rallying cry, something on which to, create a message to, lift the team to greater heights? I think the answer, to me at least, seems obvious, that it provided some kind of boost and motivation to the team. Not that they're lacking it otherwise, but this was a special year in order to, the revenge tour of the Patriots and Brady. What's your perspective on how this impacted the team and Brady?
Yeah, I don't think it was. If it was a distraction, it certainly didn't affect the team. I mean, they won the Super Bowl while all this stuff was going on, and then Tom Brady sits out 4 games. They go 3-1, and they probably could have gone 4-0 if Garoppolo were able to stay healthy, or even if Jacoby Brissett were able to stay healthy. He was playing that last game with a broken thumb. Great job by the Patriots to be able, of course, as always, they're the masters of this, just limiting the distraction and moving past it. And they're going to be asked a ton about it, but they're going to have their talking points and their boilerplate answers. And there's no one who spends more time preparing his team for the media than Bill Belichick. He tells them exactly what the message is, and they're very good about staying on message. Tom Brady's going to get bombarded by it through all his media obligations, but he's handled it, like a champ so far. And, I also think the rallying cry thing, I think it's a little overrated. A third of the team or more wasn't even here 2 years ago. They have no idea what this Deflategate stuff is really all about. And yeah, of course, Tom Brady would love to stick it to Roger Goodell and all that stuff. But Tom Brady's plenty motivated as it is. He wants to keep playing, win that 5th Super Bowl title, prove to the world that his training methods and his dietary methods are working, and he can prolong his career and play till he's age 45 and all that stuff. So that's what motivates him more than getting back at Roger Goodell for Deflategate. It's, Robert Kraft loves to play it up and kind of pander to the fan base a little bit. And, but organizationally wise, they've moved past it. It was a surreal time for the organization. I don't think any of us have ever experienced anything like it, from Bill Belichick, dropping Mona Lisa veto references in press conferences, to recreating scientific experiments, to you and me, Dan, going to federal court and hearing attorney generals argue this. The whole thing was surreal. But, the Patriots did an incredible job of not letting it affect their football team.
Yeah, had you ever been to federal court before Deflategate? Was this your virgin voyage in the land of federal litigation?
It was so fascinating to me. I've never been to federal district court. I've never been to the appellate division. So for me, it was an interesting civics lesson to learn how a lawsuit works from start to finish. And Dan, just getting to talk to you throughout the process, you were incredibly helpful explaining these things in just real world, simple terms. And what sticks out to me, it's so fascinating, is you and I, we sat there on March 3rd, I think it was, in an appellate court. The NFL came in, the union and Tom Brady came in. They had that lower court victory. And you and I, we sat through the appeal, and we both came out, and our instant reaction was, wow, this Judge Parker hammered him, and Judge Chin seemed pretty decisively on the NFL side, and this is a 2-1 loss for Brady. It does not look good. And then all the analysis you heard moving forward, well, maybe it wasn't so bad for Brady, and here's how he could still win. But you and I, we had that instant reaction right away. This is bad. This is a 2-1 loss for Brady. And that's exactly how it turned out. So I thank you for being kind of my law professor throughout this and teaching me how things work and what kind of keys to read from the judges and how you can infer how things are going just from the tone that the judges are taking.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Ben. I learned a lot about this case. I've handled not that many arbitrations. I'm an appellate lawyer, but through this vehicle of Deflategate, I too learned a great deal about the law, and it was all compressed in such a shortened time period, between the district court action, the oral arguments before Judge Berman, and then, of course, the three-judge panel. It was exciting, and unfortunately, practicing law outside of Deflategate is not nearly as exciting or interesting. So you kind of came in and left on a high note. It doesn't get as good as this.
Yeah, definitely. And also what was so fascinating was, by the time they reached the appeal, it's Daniel Clement on one side and who was
Paul Clement. Paul Clement.
And then who was the other big attorney general too? That was
Ted Olson.
There you go. Ted Olson with the NFL Ted Olson was with Brady, right?
Yeah, on the Supreme Court petition, and then Jeffrey Kessler was the trial and appellate attorney for the NFLPA and for Brady before Judges Berman and before the Second Circuit. You're talking about three of the preeminent lawyers in the United States. If you had to rank, the most acclaimed lawyers, you can't do worse than those. You can't do any better than those three.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, first of all, just the absurdity of people of that power. I mean, former attorney generals who are arguing in front of the Supreme Court, now arguing Deflategate. That's just the absurdity. But for you and me, I mean, what a fascinating opportunity just to, watch the Michael Jordan of the legal field basically get to do his work in court that day for both sides. So that was fascinating to me, just to get an up-close look at how the process works and to actually sit in a courtroom and pay attention and hear the arguments the lawyers are making. I found the whole thing fascinating. And I tell you what, it made going back to covering football difficult, to go from Deflategate and the legal process to all of a sudden, breaking down guard play. That was a difficult transition to make.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that I took, I thought it fascinating that there was such a fascination with the legal process, and Dan and I both had a pretty good platform to talk about that through Twitter, through blogs, through other places. But honestly, this case moved lightning fast. Everyone was complaining throughout the whole thing how long Deflategate was dragging on. But if you look at a typical federal lawsuit that goes through the entire appeals process, it could take up to twice as long as this case, maybe even longer than that. So that was kind of one thing that I'll just warn you, if you ever sounds like you have the desire to get into legal reporting, it's not always quite that exciting.
That was one thing I noticed too, just talking to experts to, how is this proceeding going to go? How is this proceeding going to go? The timeline was always very long. Well, it could take over a year or more, but this thing felt very expedited. So you learn that there are special rules for special people, I guess. But, back to the teaching point, I had never heard of en banc before, and then all of a sudden, everywhere you go around Boston, they're talking about en banc on sports talk radio, and everyone's an en banc expert all of a sudden. Seriously, this if you can remove yourself from the passions of Deflategate and the emotions of it, what a tremendous teaching tool this whole thing was. Just how our system works and the burden, the standards and burdens that need to be met for lawsuits to be won or lost. The whole thing was very fascinating to me.
Yeah, no doubt that the Deflategate saga will have led to a spike in law school applications in a certain part of the country. And, someday we'll hear somebody's story about how they were motivated to go to law school and become a successful lawyer because of the, sense of outrage and injustice that they felt about Deflategate. So that clearly was beneficial not only to an understanding of the profession, but an interest in becoming a lawyer, because the legal profession pretty much dictated the outcome of the suspension and the Deflategate saga in general, and it's always helpful to open up a window into these kinds of proceedings that are largely kept secret, or at least not heavily reported in the mainstream media. So it brought people like Dan Worley and myself, and of course Michael McCann in spades, to the attention of national media, and of course to people who are watching on TV and following the story. You mentioned in your wrap-up of Deflategate that it brought out a whole cadre of scientists and lawyers seeking out their 15 minutes of fame, and I certainly plead guilty to that, but not solely for the purposes of seeking fame, but I love talking about it. And there was a level of publicity and attention surrounding that. But, that's the beauty of Twitter. Everyone has an opinion. And if you break it down the right way and you're thoughtful, you'll get some attention. But there's no question that was one of the oddities of Deflategate, just the rise in the expertise from, people weighing in with either engineering or scientific or legal opinions. It was nonstop.
Well, they certainly picked the wrong fan base to mess with, because here in Boston, home to Harvard and MIT, I literally heard from the most accomplished scientists, you could think of, all these physicists and people from MIT and Harvard weighing in, and they write their 10-page thesis paper about why the Patriots are innocent. And it's cool, but at the same time, obviously, they're looking to get their name in the newspaper and out on Twitter and all that stuff. So it got overwhelming with all the people who just kind of wanted their attention. One thing I appreciated about you, Dan, is just how into it you were. You weren't just like a fly-by-night, get my name out there and attach it to Deflategate. You looked at the court filings every single day and broke them down and contributed to your blog, and you came up to New York and attended the hearing. that was very impressive, and so that's why I wouldn't lump you in there with Dan, because you were very passionate about it. You weren't just seeking your 15 minutes. You were very much into analyzing this thing.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Very nice of you. And I was just sorry to let it go. And hopefully we get one last hurrah over the next week or two, because it will be a critical backstory and an important discussion point during media week at the Super Bowl. So we wanted to get ahead of the curve and start today.
Yeah. So let's get back to football.
I'm not going to bring it up. I promise you guys that. I'm thinking out. Well, in terms of asking questions to the Patriots, because they're not going to answer anything. So, I'm not going to be like, well, Tom, how's, now that you get to face Rod, there will be plenty of other people asking that stuff. We have moved on here, but just breaking down the legal aspects and, did they do it and what happened? I still find that stuff kind of interesting.
Yeah. Speaking of Roger, do you think he'll ever step foot in Foxborough again?
At some point, what people don't realize is, not only does, I understand not wanting to be a distraction and take the attention, put it on him and away from the game. The Kraft family, one thing to note, they're a little sensitive about, their perception with the fan base right now. And if you remember in May of 2015, when the NFL owners were meeting in San Francisco, and Robert Kraft read a statement where he's not going to fight the team penalties and he's going to kind of lay down, accept it for the better of the league. He got killed for that. The Patriots fans did not like that. They were ready to defend the wall, and we're innocent. And Robert Kraft had no choice. Trying to fight those penalties with the owners would have been like ramming his head against the wall. So he would have gone nowhere. So, dropping the fight was the obvious, logical thing to do. But the Patriots fans did not want to hear that, and he got killed for that. And since then, he's been over the top in denouncing Goodell, because he's just been very, I don't know if desperate is the word, but he wants to get back in the good graces of the fan base, and he cares deeply about being beloved by them. So he doesn't want to invite Roger Goodell to the games. He doesn't want to have him sitting in his box and be seen hobnobbing with public enemy number one and sipping champagne with Roger. I think all sides are okay with Goodell staying away for certainly the time being. And, if the Patriots win the Super Bowl again and then they host the kickoff game, he probably won't be able to skip it this time. He'd probably have to go. But the Kraft family doesn't exactly want Goodell at the stadium either.
Ben, I still come back to this, acceptance of responsibility by the Patriots. Going back, close to 2 years ago, why did the Patriots accept the NFL's punishment? Because it became a real controversial point within their fan base. If Brady was going to fight and the team was going to support Brady, was it a mistake for the Patriots to accept the loss of the draft picks and pay a fine if they didn't believe that the organization did anything wrong? How do you square that?
The only the only reason they should have continued fighting it was for the fans, to show the fans that we're fighting this and we don't believe in it. Because you would have just been wasting your money and your time, because it would have gone nowhere. The Patriots are not part of a union like Tom Brady is. They're part of a partnership with 31 other teams, and there are very explicit rules that, they have the only way they could have fought is if they appealed to the NFL themselves, and Roger Goodell has no obligation to take fairness into account. He would have just rubber stamped his own decision. And so fighting the penalties wouldn't have gone anywhere. They don't have protections like Tom Brady does in a union. They don't have recourse like going to federal court like Brady does. So it wouldn't have gone anywhere. But the optics of it would have looked better for the fan base. We believe in our guy. We're going to fight this thing to the end. We're going to protect the wall and all that stuff. So,
do you think there was an expectation on Kraft's part that if he kind of rolled over on this penalty, that Goodell may take it easy on Brady in exchange for the team sort of taking the bulk of the penalty? So that, if that's true, it kind of follows how Kraft used to be buddy-buddy with Goodell, and now he's, as you mentioned, sort of the opposite of that. What are your thoughts?
They're still buddy-buddy. Like the rift is very overrated, but publicly the perception, Kraft does not want to be seen with Goodell, so they downplay it. But like again, that rift is very overrated as well. I mean, I don't think Kraft blames Goodell as much as he blames the lawyers and some of the other owners who are really pushing this. We've never gotten real confirmation about which owners were truly behind this. I mean, we assume it was Irsay and maybe Bisciotti in Baltimore, and probably Woody Johnson and Jerry Jones and Jerry Richardson, some of the old guard of the NFL.
And Mara.
John Mara, exactly. So it's those are the guys who are more pushing this, and so I don't think Kraft really blames Goodell. What was the initial question? I apologize.
Just whether it was you thought it could have been a quid pro quo.
Kraft flat out admitted that his problem was he assumed that Goodell would go easy on Brady if Kraft laid down his sword. He didn't get it in writing. He didn't get a firm, yes, we will take it easy on your guy if you just give up the fight. So one criticism I've heard that is that Kraft should have really gone for more of a global settlement with this whole thing. He should have laid down his sword, only if he got in firm writing from Goodell that X and Y will also happen to Brady so he should have gone for more of a global settlement.
Yeah, I think he lost all of his leverage with that, action, not being tied to part of it, as you put it, a global settlement. I mean, the Patriots as an organization weren't going to be any worse off had they fought, the accusations, because the penalty that they did end up paying was pretty significant and wasn't any kind of a deal or a reduction of, what could have been the likely punishment. I mean, they basically, fell on their sword in the hope and prayer that Goodell would go tread a little bit more lightly on Brady. So I think that was a critical error early on, and there may have been some regret on the Patriots' part later on, because they did end up filing an amicus brief with the Second Circuit. I mean, how odd was that? The Patriots.
That goes back to the Patriots, pandering to the fans and trying to get back in their good graces. I mean, let's call it what it is. That amicus brief wasn't going to have much of an impact on the courts, but hey, the Patriots got out there and showed that they support their guy when they had the chance to do it back in May, and they didn't. I don't feel a whole ton of sympathy for the Patriots and their penalties. Not the Brady side of it, just the team where they lost $1 million in a first round and a fourth round pick. This was not their first time. I mean, they got called to the principal's office before with Spygate, so this was not their first time. And they come up with the Wells report in context, and they won't give the follow-up interview for McNally and Jastrzemski, and they have these like kind of nasty back and forth with the lawyers. They were inciting the NFL office a little bit. They're almost asking for it. So the penalties, they seem kind of harsh, but look, we all knew that Belichick would be able to find a way, and they did it with the Chandler Jones trade, coming up with an extra second-round pick. And here they are. They're in the Super Bowl, so it's not like losing this first-round pick really hurt them. And the $1 million, I mean, who cares? The Patriots print their own money. So, I mean, the whole Wells report and context thing, like they didn't just like take their penalty like you see a lot of teams do. They fought it tooth and nail and deny and accuse. And so I don't feel a whole lot of sympathy for the Patriots with the penalties that they were slapped with.
But are they any different than other teams throughout the league that try to get an edge. We've seen, Ben McAdoo with the Giants, with his, walkie-talkie, incident recently. And of course, the legendary stories of the Raiders, filming practices, from hotel rooms, and George Allen's paranoia. As long as the National Football League has been in existence, spying and trying to skirt rules, it's a little bit of gamesmanship that every team employs. Do you feel in any way that the Patriots were singled out, or is what they did above and beyond what is the typical gamesmanship and rule breaking that teams sometimes try to get away with?
Yeah, I would say they were probably singled out. I think one thing we learned throughout all this was how all the quarterbacks prefer their footballs a little differently. And yeah, maybe Aaron Rodgers overinflates his a little bit, and Eli Manning maybe under. I mean, every quarterback has their own preference, and I'm sure other teams were tinkering with the balls. And we've heard, the Vikings and the Panthers kept the balls under a heater one game, and the Chargers were using Gorilla Grip towels, the sticky towels that they weren't supposed to be using. This stuff definitely happens, but the Patriots, they already got caught once, and we all know this was about revenge from the owners. They felt like they weren't properly punished for Spygate, so they went. I think Jerry Jones has said, we tried to kill a mosquito with a shotgun with this one, and Bob McNair from Houston said we made a mountain out of a molehill. So they've kind of admitted they took this thing way too far. They didn't understand the ideal gas law. They were hell bent on getting the Patriots, the Chris Mortensen 11 out of 12 football report escalated this thing to DEFCON 5. And I don't fault Mortensen at all. He's obviously getting that information from someone very high up in the league office. That's on the league office. Someone in there is passing along very bad information, and they didn't feel the need to correct it. So the league office definitely has their hands very dirty in this as well. And this whole thing should have been avoided. It was not a big deal at the time. The Patriots won that game 45-10, so you can't say that the deflated footballs had a big, impact on the game. But both sides definitely should have handled this thing a lot better, and both sides are responsible for it escalating to what it became.
That being said, I think from the NFL's perspective, at least as an end game, this couldn't have gone any better. Like, they have a sweeping legal decision in a federal appellate court that they reside in. It was really the ideal legal result for them, affirming and even expanding Goodell's powers. That being said, Goodell has also taken a ton of PR hit. I'm sure this has been a stressful couple of years for him. In your opinion, do you think if he could do this all over, he would have done it differently?
I think they're cool with it. I think this was a home run for Roger Goodell and the owners. Yeah, it was a bad look for the league. I don't think it had anything to do with like the TV ratings this year. But not a great image for Roger. But it's Roger's job. The reason he gets paid $40 million a year is to take the bullets and to be the shield for the shield, basically. And he is the guy who gets all the hate and all the negative attention, and he takes it instead of the NFL owners. So you never hear about Steve Bisciotti and the Ravens' domestic violence problem. It's always Roger Goodell and the Ravens' domestic violence problem. So not only did Goodell face all the bullets, but then obviously to get this affirmed in courts, Goodell, Article 46 gives Goodell the power to do whatever he wants. It's now in writing, a court decision. When they go to the negotiating table to redo this CBA in 2021, I mean, what a huge ace in the hole now. They have so much more leverage in these negotiations. If the union wants to limit Roger Goodell's powers, they're going to have to give up so many different concessions now. So even though it was bad publicity for the league, it's still like WWE. Like any publicity is good publicity. It kept the NFL in the news cycle during the spring and the summer. And then now they have a decision affirmed in the courts that greatly strengthens Goodell and the NFL office over the union. So I think this was a grand slam for the NFL.
Yeah, but Ben, didn't it come at a steep price for the NFL and Roger Goodell? I mean, we certainly don't know ultimately how it's going to play out in 2020, 2021. I mean, maybe Roger Goodell's, position in leading the negotiations and being the front person in the next round of CBA talks, maybe that has been compromised somewhat. Is there a possibility that he may not return at the conclusion of his contract? Because I don't see this as an outright slam dunk. I mean, it undermined the NFL's brand. It undermined the relationship between management and labor. And I think to this day, a corrosive and toxic atmosphere exists between labor and management. How could that possibly be good or a slam dunk for the NFL, other than a Pyrrhic victory of having legal precedent?
Right. Well, I mean, that's huge for them. And look, Roger Goodell's goal is simple. Make the NFL a $25 billion industry and make money for his owners. Like, I don't think Roger Goodell and the owners care too much that they have a toxic relationship with the union. They are at a very, very strong bargaining position with them. And having a toxic relationship with D. Smith from the NFL's perspective, it's like, oh, well, they're almost like a minor annoyance to them. Like they don't have too much power, and all the power right now resists with the owners and with Roger Goodell. And I think they're happy with that because the money is pouring in. I think they got the much better side of the deal in this last CBA. The NFL is printing its own money. Yeah, the TV ratings are down, but I think interest in the league is still very, very high. It's still the dominant brand in sports, dominated the TV ratings throughout the fall. Even though they were down, they were still number one. It's bad PR, but it doesn't. I don't see it really hurting the product that much. People still tune in. They still play fantasy. They still gamble. They still watch their teams. They're gonna watch the Super Bowl in droves. The negatives are there, but I think from the NFL's perspective, I think it's only a positive that it gave them so much power over the union, especially for the next time that they have to go negotiate.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, I see that point. But I think maybe it came at a significant cost to the NFL in other areas. But I guess we'll see. But it is a very complicated, intricate answer that's not black and white.
I think if anything, the NFL, I know you guys have mentioned this, but they lost a lot of trust among players. And I think that could be something moving into these next CBA negotiations if the players and the PA side can't trust each other, can't be in the same room, and there's the same leadership in place. Ultimately, that could lead to a work stoppage in 2021. That's pretty speculative, but I think that has the possibility of being the real takeaway here and in some of these other cases. But
the players don't have the wherewithal to stage an actual effective lockout or to survive a lockout. I mean, we saw this the last time. Yeah, there was a lockout all summer. And they missed OTAs, but then as soon as training camp began, they came. They folded quicker than a cheap tent, and they accepted a deal, and they wanted to go back to work and start, collecting their paychecks. I mean, the guys who are going to be fighting the CBA in 2021, like a third of the league will still be left, and it's guys that are currently in college and high school. They're not thinking about this stuff now. And meanwhile, you've got these billionaire owners who are very successful and very smart guys. They're going to prepare for years. And, D. Smith and George Atala and the NFLPA, they're smart too, but they are taking a knife to a gunfight in this negotiation. And the players just never historically have had the discipline to save their money and to be able to withstand and actually stage an effective holdout or lockout. And so you talk about this work stoppage. The owners are fine with it. They think they would crush the union in a work stoppage.
It really shows the negotiating dynamics of billionaires versus millionaires, right? I mean, the billionaires can sit it out and wait. And we've seen that historically, not only in the NFL, but in other leagues as well. So I think it's a really good point. Ben, I really appreciate that you're so unbiased on these issues, and so I think you'll have a good take here. But what do you think, going into the Super Bowl, Brady has a chance to win his 5th Super Bowl title, possibly cementing his legacy as the best quarterback ever. What impact does Deflategate have on Brady's legacy moving forward?
I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's not, it might be one sentence in the big paragraph. I think of like his Wikipedia page. Like, where is it going to go? It might be one sentence in the opening paragraph, and then there will be a section in the middle about it. But like, the only people who are going to focus on it are, your typical Jets fans or Ravens fans who want to call him Tom Shady and the Cheatriots and like, fine, like, junior high humor, basically. Like, anyone who's rational about this understands that Brady, right now, it's him or Joe Montana is the best of all time. And, Brady's now made it to his 7th Super Bowl. Montana only went to 4. the Joe Montana people say he never lost. He was 4-0 in the Super Bowl, and as if, getting to the Super Bowl and losing is like a negative mark on Brady. Like, this is the greatest run we've ever seen. 16, 17 years now with Brady and Belichick. So if you can't appreciate their greatness and you want to just call them cheaters, like, that's your immature, viewpoint, and fine. There's nothing that's going to change it. But I think if you want to take a step back and be unbiased and try to just, have an open perspective about it, it's a very minor thing. Obviously, you look at Brady's numbers since Deflategate, they've been through the roof. He's done even better now since they've supposedly been putting more attention on the ball custody and the ball procedures and all that. So Brady is clearly one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. And if you can't accept that, then, that's your thing.
Yeah. I mean, does he even need to win the Super Bowl this week to cement that status? I mean, whether it's 4 Super Bowls or 5 Super Bowls, the difference between winning or losing one game shouldn't be dispositive over whether he's the greatest of all time. He's already won 4 Super Bowls, and the 2 that he lost were almost like, miracle drives by the New York Giants in 2 separate games. He could very easily be standing here with 6 Super Bowl trophies as we speak. And the fact that he doesn't have it is through no fault of his own. I mean, that's just one of those crazy, finishes in 2 games, in a row.
I would say if he wins a 5th, I mean, that ends the debate to me. He's got 5. Montana had 4. Bradshaw had 4. Like, no one will have won 5. No one will have been to 7 games like he has. I think the only other person with 5 Super Bowl rings is Charles Haley, and defensive ends just don't get lumped in quarterbacks. So I agree. I think you could still make a very good case for him as the greatest of all time, even if he loses. But if he wins, that's it. Debate's over in my book. 5 Super Bowl rings, and he's still going. I mean, he's 39, but he's still on top of his game. Maybe never played better than how he's playing right now. And you look at Joe Montana, he wheezed to the finish line, and Peyton Manning did the same thing. I mean, Brady's still going strong, a lot longer than these other guys. So to me, he's the greatest of all time. And if he wins 5, you can't even have the debate anymore.
How about Bill Belichick? He's already won 4 Super Bowls. He's surpassed, Lombardi, and whether he wins 4 or 5, where does he rank currently in your view of, the Mount Rushmore of coaches in NFL history? Where does he rank historically among the greatest NFL coaches of all time? And would winning a week from Sunday impact that or raise his ranking if he's not already number 1?
Yeah, I feel like Belichick has less at stake. I feel like his greatness is proven, but the people you're comparing him to are a lot of the old coaches, the Lombardis and the Tom Landrys, George Halas, guys who obviously didn't get the opportunity to play for as many Super Bowls. And just totally different era. There is no question that, like, Super Bowl era, it's Belichick and everyone else. I mean, even Don Shula, maybe Bill Walsh. Bill Walsh and Bill Belichick might be 1 and 2, but Belichick's done it for longer than Walsh did. Winning the Super Bowl 2 years ago was a big confirmation for Belichick, because he didn't just he showed that he could win over an extended period of time. They won a Super Bowl 10 years apart. No coach had ever done that before. His first run, 3 and 4 years. Bill Walsh won like 4 in 8 years or something like that, but that was all one run. Belichick has turned over the roster so many times and now won with, they won the 3 and the 4 years, and they made it back in 2007 and 11 and 14 and now 16. The prolonged greatness, they're now starting to break all the records. They've won the most division titles in a row, been to 6 straight conference championship games in a row. He's probably surpassed Bill Walsh, and I don't think you're ever going to be able to compare Vince Lombardi to Bill Belichick, because the game is just so different now. When you also factor in the salary cap and how much turnover there is now, Bill Walsh could keep the same team every year. Bill Belichick is constantly churning that team. So to me, he's the best of all time too. And I mean, it's just one incredible time to be able to witness this. You have Brady and Belichick, all these all-time. We're never going to see this again for a long time in the NFL, the sustained and prolonged greatness that these guys have had.
Yeah, yesterday we heard Ben Roethlisberger on the radio and say that he's not committing to coming back next year. Brady's 39 years old now, I believe. Playing as well as ever, without Gronk. is there a chance that, they win, he goes out on a winning note and retires after this year? Or how long do you, what's the Boston community saying about how long he's going to keep on playing?
I would be completely shocked if Brady rode off into the sunset with 5. I think he wants 6, and then he wants 7. He really wants to prove that his training methods and his diet are revolutionary and they work, because he also has this TB12 business that he's starting with his partner and his body coach Alex Guerrero. So they're trying to, by playing longer, it's also selling their training regimen more or less, and trying to get people more into $50 packets of nuts and things like that. So I think he wants to just keep playing and defy age and show people that his training methods work and play till he's 45. He takes better care of his body now than he ever did, and he's moving around and more athletic at age 39 than he was at 29. The way he shuffles around the pocket and avoids the pass rush and extends plays, it's pretty incredible. I mean, that was what hampered them in those 2 Giants Super Bowls. He couldn't move around and avoid the pass rush. And it's really a testament to him that with everything he's accomplished, he's put in a lot of time to improve on areas of his game that were a weakness, especially his mobility. And now it's a whole new added dimension to his game, a whole new weapon. Brady, you have to be cognizant of the way he moves around and shuffles around the pocket. So that's another testament to his greatness, that he was able to put in the time. And I don't see him wanting to step down anytime soon. He's at the top of his game. The Patriots, they'll be right back at it again next year. There's no reason that they can't keep this going for a few years. The only thing is at his age, you suffer a knee injury, something happens, it's a lot harder to come back from it. So that's probably what's going to happen. But as long as he can withstand some of the hits and stay healthy, he could play another 4 or 5 years. Like, why not?
Yeah, what about Bill Belichick? He has coached the Patriots now for, I think this is his 16th season as head coach. It's almost like Landry-esque or Shula-esque. Could you ever see Bill Belichick coaching another NFL team? And in connection with that question, is there any reasonable intelligence out there about the status of Bill Belichick's contract?
No, there's no information about it. It's very, very secretive. He can be with the Patriots for as long as he wants. I would never envision him coaching another NFL team. Why would you? You've got everything you could possibly want here. I don't see any signs of slowing down. He's 64 years old or whatever he is, but loves it. Loves the grind, loves the game planning, the film, the preparation, the team building aspect of it. Just loves all of it. And, there's some thought that his contract goes through, I think, the 2019 or 2020 season. That would give him 2 full decades. Then he could ride off. But I think he just loves it too much, and he's too young to retire. He's too young to just – he doesn't strike me as a guy who wants to play golf 3 times a week or just go fishing like Jimmy Johnson. Like, he loves football. The one thing I could see him doing is quitting football and going to lacrosse. I mean, we all know he loves lacrosse, and maybe he wants to coach lacrosse at more of a grassroots level, go to Wesleyan College where he, his alma mater, coach the lacrosse team there, something like that, just to satisfy his coaching Jones. But he'll never coach another NFL team, and I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. And part of me thinks that he wants to move on from Brady. He wants to, whether it's Garoppolo or Jacoby Brissett or maybe someone who's not even on the team yet, he wants to keep going with another quarterback just to prove that he can keep doing it even without Tom Brady.
Yeah, I mean, the incredible stat that I always love about Bill Belichick is he started his NFL career working for Ted Marchibroda as an unpaid, I think, or a lowly paid intern for the Baltimore Colts when they were the Baltimore Colts in 1975. He has been on an NFL sideline continuously for the past 42 years. That's almost a half a century. It's mind-boggling.
And he gets – people think of Belichick as this grumpy guy and doesn't give you any answers in press conferences. I mean, most of the time he's phenomenal, and he's such a good communicator. Oh, he's fantastic. He's a great communicator. He's a great teacher. His mom was a teacher, and he understands how to teach. And, I mean, what a treasure trove of history and information. You just mentioned his first year was in 1975. So, like, the Patriots are playing the Steelers last week, and he can go back and tell you what it was like to game plan to play against the Steel Curtain defense and Mean Joe Green and Jack Lambert. And then he coached Lawrence Taylor and Phil Simms and those guys in the 80s. And then through the night, I mean, just the amount of information and knowledge and history that this guy has, like when he wants to be interesting, he's the most fascinating guy in the league, and just so much fun to just sit down and listen to his old stories. So just, incredible source of information. And when he's on and when he wants to talk, like there's no one better to just sit down and listen to tell his stories.
Really, you're a film guy, and you love to break down, the plays, and you bring more than just, reporting to the game. Have you ever had an opportunity to sit down with Coach Belichick and, kind of learn from the master and have him maybe, show you different ways to kind of look at the game? I mean, that would be an unbelievable opportunity.
I would kill for that. I wish. He used to do that in the day, even in his early, certainly with the Giants, and then in his early Patriots head coaching days, on Fridays with the beat writers, they'd go over a few plays on film or whatever. And I would kill for that because I freely admit the limitations of watching the film. You don't know what the quarterback's read was and what they called on the sideline and which guy is actually running the wrong route. I mean, and Belichick even admits that too. When you're studying an opponent, you can't really tell sometimes what's going on because you don't know what was in each person's head. The one thing that I do like, though, is Belichick for the team website every week does do a film breakdown. He'll go over the plays, and it's very gratifying and reassuring when he points out something. It's like, oh, cool, I pointed that out too. Like, I actually got something on the test right. But then also, I'll sit there for 8 hours and I'll watch the film, and then Bill will do a 5-minute clip, and he'll point out 7 different things that I didn't see or didn't know, and it's just that part's very humbling. But his film breakdowns are so fascinating, and I would love to actually, it's very whitewashed on the team website, and you only get the positive stuff. I would love to actually sit down and watch the film with him, but maybe one day, but it hasn't happened yet.
Well, we've strayed way away from the law, but and I know that you have an extremely busy couple of weeks here, Ben. So we'd like to give you a big thank you. That was a really interesting conversation. It was always great to hear your kind of insider perspective of what's going on from the New England area. So thank you very much for coming on and joining us.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys having me. This is it was very interesting from my end as well. Always good to talk. It's like inside baseball stuff. Like it's good to talk with knowledgeable people about these topics.
Yeah, and I'm really, really thrilled that you're able to join us. I mean, I love getting beyond the law and talking about, the game of football, the business side of it, the relationships. There's so much interesting about the sport, and you've been around some very exciting, football administrations from the Bill Parcells, Sperano, Ireland era to now the Belichick era. And as a long time and old time New York Giants fan, my rooting interest still lies with Bill Belichick, mainly out of gratitude for all the fantastic work he did as the defensive coordinator of the New York Giants throughout the 1980s. He was their defensive coordinator in 1983. So he's been doing and coaching up defenses for a long, long time. So that's where my rooting interest lies. And, it's just been wonderful having you on our podcast. And this might have been the most fun podcast. I shouldn't say that on the air, but you were outstanding. I don't want anyone else to think that they weren't great. We've had a lot of terrific ones back to back, but this was really illuminating. And, I just wish you a fantastic trip to Houston, and I know you're going to be busy throughout the week with all the interviews and all the stories you're going to file. And I look forward to keeping up with your great writing and your coverage of the Super Bowl.
Well, thank you very much. Heading out to Houston on Sunday, so I'm going to be out there for 9 days, believe it or not. So it's a long time, but we'll have all the updates. And actually, before we go, let me leave you with one last Belichick stat. I meant to tell you this one before. So this is the 51st Super Bowl that the NFL is going to hold. This will be Belichick's 10th. 7 as head coach of the Patriots, 2 as the Giants defensive coordinator, and then 1 with the Patriots against the Packers in '96 when he was an assistant coach. So 51 Super Bowls, he's been to 10 out of them. 1 out of 5 Super Bowls Belichick's been in. So that's just incredible.
Yeah, wow. Well, listen, 9 days in Houston. I hope you like Mexican food.
Next put on a few pounds that week. That's
Thanks again, Ben. Everyone can check out Ben at the Boston Globe as well as on Twitter at Ben Volin, Volin. Thank you, and until next time, we'll see everyone later.